Hi, I'm Andrew Moy from Tightline Fly Fishing. Today we're going to be tying a favorite bonefish fly of mine. It's kind of a spin-off of like a Peterson shrimp. It's a fantastic pattern. And our first step, we're going to take a pin with a head on it. Very important that this has a head on it. You could use a very small nail if you had it with a head on it. That also works. You can use monofilament. I don't really like monofilament as much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to score this a little bit and just kind of rough this up with like an old pair of scissors or a pair of pliers, something that almost cuts into it a little bit. Give it some ridges. And I'm doing it right towards the tip of that in this section here, towards the tip of the pin. And this is going to get tied in on top like this, with the head facing off the back. So I'm going to get a thread base going. And I'm going to lay this on top. I'm going to wrap over that section that I've scored. I'm going to lock that on like that. And you can see the pin sticking off maybe a half an inch or so. I'm going to come down that bend slightly just to get that bend to go angle downward a little bit. Not much. And I'm going to really get that pin locked in on top of that hook shank. Like that. Okay. Then I'm going to use a little bit of fishing glue. And I'm going to hit that with some fishing glue to help lock that in some more. Okay. It's actually fly tires glue, excuse me. This is a great product. It really works well. It's like a Zap-A-Gap, only in my opinion much better. So we've got that locked in. My next step is to take that out of the vise, turn the hook around, and put the hook in the vise backwards like this. And then take your, I've actually got the thread in back here. I'm going to come around and go this way around the pin like this. I'm going to come right back to that ball there. My first step, I'm going to take some McFly foam. Okay, this is an egg tying material, and I'm going to actually make a little egg sac on the back of my fly here. I'm going to basically wrap that, kind of wrap it around the pin, and I'm going to lock in right behind the head on that pin. And I'm going to lock that down like that, and then I'm going to trim this away here. Then I'm going to take that egg yarn, I'm going to stretch it, and I'm going to cut it, shorten it up like that. Don't make it too small, but don't make it too big either. So that's locked in. My next step is I'm going to take some rubber legs. These are Crazy Legs in gold metallic. And I'm going to tie these in. I got two legs. I'm going to tie them on my side like this. Right on the side of that orange. Like that. And then I'm going to just take them. I'm going to fold them over. And I'm going to lock them in on the other side like that. Lock that in. Stretch those legs out. Cut them. And then take them, and we're going to cut them maybe 1.5 inches or so long. Like so. Our next step, we're going to take a little bit of Arctic fox or fin raccoon. Okay, this is actually Arctic fox. So we're going to take a little bit of that, about that much there. We don't need too much. I'm going to trim that off. And this is going to get tied in on the underside here, like this. And I'm going to extend it out maybe 1 inch long or so. I'm going to lock that in right there. Bring that back, and then I'm going to trim that away. So I've got a little bit of that on there. My next step is to tie in a couple antennae. And for my antenna, I'm using peccary. This is off of a boar, a wild boar. It's called a peccary. And they're real stiff. They're really good for doing antenna. So I'm going to put these two, and keep in mind, this fly is going to flip over. So I want the antenna kind of coming off the top here, like this. And I'm going to tie one on my side on the top, kind of like that. And then one on the other side on top being the underside, because again, this fly is going to flip over. So I'm going to tie this one under here. I'm going to make them the same length, like that. lock those in, trim them. The next step is to tie in a couple eyes, and these eyes are already pre-made. What we've done is we've burned some monofilament, we've colored it with magic marker, and we've epoxied them. We're actually going to do a YouTube video here shortly on actually making these eyes, so stay tuned for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie one on my side and one on the other side. These are going right on the side basically. I'm going to make them the same length. And I'm going to wrap those back all the way back up to right about there, and then trim that. Now before I trim it, I'm just going to kind of make sure they're where I want them. So what I'll do is I'll just wiggle them out like that, get my antenna like that. And you can see those eyes really start to bring this fly together. I'm going to trim that monofilament away. And then I'm going to take, just to secure this whole thing back here, I'm going to take some of this fishing glue and just coat that section in there. And then let that dry. You can run your finger over it quick. Now the next step, we're going to make a dubbing loop back here. So we're going to form a loop. And I'm going to bring that loop's going to be right all the way back up against that, kind of up against that orange, that whole section that we tied there. And then I'm going to use a dubbing loop tool to help spin this. And that dubbing loop tool is going to go in that loop. It's hard, I know it's hard for you guys to see, so I put that dubbing loop tool in there. And I'm going to just put that aside for now. And then my next step is going to be to dub this back section. Now you can wrap this with, you could wrap it with wool, you could dub it, you could use an SLF dubbing, which I like. Right now I'm just going to use a beaver dubbing in a cream color. This is a Wapsi beaver dubbing in cream. It's a light color. I kind of like this color. It's pretty light. It makes the body lighter than the wing. The wing's going to be more of a tan color. The whole overall fly is going to be pretty light in color, but I like the body being a little bit lighter than the wing. So I'm gonna dub this thread. I'm not going to put it on too thick, and I'm going to dub this right back here. And again, we just got to work it around that dubbing loop that's hanging there. So just dub that whole section. Just keep on dubbing. And we're gonna dub up as far as we can as we start hitting the back of the hook here. Just keep coming forward right into there. You get to a point where you can't really go any further. And then once we're at that point, we just let that thread hang for a minute. You can take your bobbin and just get out of the way with your little material clip there. Now I'm going to take a product called Senyo's Shaggy Dub. It's this stuff here. It looks like it's basically dubbing, but it's micro rubber legs basically. And I'm going to take a clump of those rubber legs and I'm going to stick them in my dubbing loop, like so. And I'm going to kind of spread them out. Get them spread out if I can. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to spin it. Just watch you don't get any of your body parts in that dubbing loop. Get it spun up. You can see that starts to spin that up. And then I'm just going to pull some of that out a little bit, kind of like that. And I'm going to put this right, I'm going to wrap this right through this whole back section here. And then I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to tie it off. trim that, take the fly and spin it around in the vise. Now I'm just going to continue dubbing forward. With my same dubbing. I'm using that beaver dubbing in cream. A little bit at a time. Okay, we're going to be dubbing this whole way forward, so you're going to need a fair amount on there. We don't need to make it super thick. And I kind of like to just kind of taper it a little bit smaller as I go. So now I've dubbed my body. And my next step is going to be, I'm taking a 5/32 gold reel eye. And I'm going to tie that right on top. Right behind my eye here. And I'm just going to get that locked on real good. So we just kind of figure eight that on, just like we do a clouser eye on a saltwater clouser. And we just go around a bunch of times. We can move that eye if we need to a little bit. There, I just slid it back a little bit. Get it locked on. Now if you want, you can put a little bit of dubbing. Put the dubbing on real sparse, real thin, and you can dub around that eye just to kind of coat that thread a little bit. So put a little bit of dubbing there, and then I'll just figure eight that section a little bit. Like so. And then our last step is to put our wing on it. And we're going to use the same Arctic fox that we used earlier. And we're just going to take a little bit bigger clump now. Not overly big, but a little bit bigger. And we're going to trim that out. And that's going to get tied underneath. Now we want this to extend just about to the eyes. The eyes being the eyes in the back here. So maybe a little bit beyond them, I would say. Hold that underneath. Lock that in. Trim that off. Finish a nice little section here. If you want, you could switch out to like a pink thread if you want a little pink section back here. Some guys like that. You don't really need it, but... So I'm just going to wrap a nice head here. Just finish that off, and then whip finish it. And when you see this fly, be amazed at how realistic it looks. And what we'll do is we'll tease this out a little bit. Some of these legs, we want to get these teased out a little bit. If they're looped over, you can trim them. You want them to kind of look like mouth parts or little stuff moving around on the front of the shrimp as he's looking at you. And there's your shrimp. Really, really an incredible pattern. That does a great job of catching bonefish. Excellent, excellent fly. Give that fly a try.